You had to say goodbye to your family and friends forever. What Indians did to white women in captivity. Hello there. Today we are going to talk about what Native Americans did to captive European women, why white men feared the honor code, and what was its main rule. What was the purpose of the Redskins tattooing their captive women with cactus ink? And is it true that in the confinement of some Indian tribes, white women were raped, starved, and even had their breasts cut off? Be sure to watch the video to the very end, because that's how you'll learn all the key details, the fierce struggle between Europeans and Indians. Surely many of you have guessed that this time we will touch upon the era of colonization and the Wild West. It began in the 17th century and lasted for 3 centuries. The natives actively opposed white people and tried to expel the latter from their territory by all available means. However, the Europeans outnumbered the Indians both in numbers and fighting ability. And it is quite understandable. The natives did not have a full understanding of firearms and effective military tactics. As a result of this preponderance in favor of the colonizers, the Redskins lost about 95 million people from their tribes. But the Indians did not give up. They regularly set fire to homes and captured Europeans. Over time, Indian tribes developed common rules that they followed. They just began to be prescribed in the so-called Code of Honor. Its main rule states that white people should be dealt with harshly and not be ceremonious for a long time, because the natives realized that colonizers are destroyers and killers. That is why whites feared the Redskins to a certain extent. Nevertheless, if Indians treated men cruelly and did not leave a single chance for salvation, they found another approach to women. The female part had only one road: captivity. Well, let's talk about everything in order. Captive of the Redskins. At first, it is worth noting that the ladies who were imprisoned by the Indians were of special value to such tribes. Almost every time the Redskins made concessions to the Europeans and made an exchange. In fact, there was an exchange of prisoners on both sides. Sometimes the Europeans were in a difficult position when a woman with a child was captured by the Indians. In this case, the cost of the latter exceeded the value of valuable things for the indigenous population several times. It should be reminded that the Redskins received blankets, firearms with ammunition, for example a rifle, and horses from the whites. Speaking of children, minors who were captured could easily be adopted or adopted. Boys and girls in this case replaced relatives of the Redskins who died in battle with Europeans. Likewise, women could be an alternative to replace a dead Indian. As far as life in captivity was concerned, women were treated rather cold-bloodedly at first, to the point that a lady could be killed on the spot. If it was necessary to lead chained captives from one place to another, the discipline was strict. As soon as a woman stopped to rest, she was immediately physically attacked. Older women could be released because they could not assimilate among the new inhabitants. The same could not be said about very young girls. In this case, they were put in foster care. Girls were brought up in their own traditions and treated with deep respect and honor. For example, they were taught to speak the Aboriginal language, dressed in different clothes, and even tattooed with cactus ink as a sign of belonging to a particular tribe. So along with the feathers on her head, the captive could have been identified by her tattoos. There is also a theory that the cactus ink symbols signified the impossibility of escape from the Mojave tribe, although it is not exactly confirmed because it contradicts the traditions of the Indian tribe. Later, the white girl became a full-fledged member of the Redskin family. Therefore, her status as a captive lost its relevance and significance. With a man's permission, such a lady could marry an Indian and bear children. Some did not even want to go back to Europe after that. Not everyone had a sweet time. We pay your attention to the fact that not all tribes of Redskins treated captives so respectfully and kindly. It all depended on the geographical situation, because not only in one part of North America, Aborigines were located. So in Canada and on the territory of Texas, Indians dealt with white women harshly and immorally. From European ladies, they made sexual slaves who satisfied all whims of warriors and also carried out hard work in economy of indigenous population. The Iroquois tribes were especially distinguished in this respect. Slave women were kept in captivity until she gave birth to a child to replace a dead relative. After that, the woman was no longer considered a human being. She could not only be killed with her own hands, but also left without food. So the poor woman died in severe agony from hunger. Of course, a few were lucky to survive because they were taken to a new tribe. And there the captive was assimilated and became one of the members of the family. But the Comanche tribe is remembered for its cruelty. Amazingly, the victim managed to survive. But 3 women and their children were taken captive, stripped of their clothes, tied up, and then beaten with clubs. Sexual slavery in the Comanche tribe, unfortunately, was also common. A famous example of a white captive. Most likely you want to know if there is a clear example of what European women had to endure in confinement. Such an example is indeed known to history. Well, let's go directly to it. The first story has to do with the Fort Parker massacre in the 1930s. The Comanche Indians were particularly cruel to Europeans. They seemed to sweep away everything in their path. The Indians caught up with several people who fled. The last were several children and a woman. And though European people tried to fight them off from the Indians, not all of them could be saved. The girl, who was almost 10 years old, ended up with the Redskins. Her name was Cynthia Ann Parker. And what is important, in captivity, the girl was treated with dignity and deep respect. Cynthia was brought up in new conditions and traditions of the Comanche tribe. Years later, the girl was married to a man named Peter Nakona. He then became the chief of the Redskin tribe. Cynthia Ann Parker lived in the tribe for about a quarter of a century and even gave birth to 3 children. When there were European raids on the Comanche tribe, Cynthia was almost killed. She was recognized by her European appearance and soon took the woman home. Although life in Indian society was a thing of the past, Cynthia Ann Parker longed for the natives. This once again proves that girls were easily assimilated into the tribes of red-skinned people and became attached to them. For the record, after Cynthia's death, her body and her daughter were reburied in Oklahoma on the Comanche reservation. Cynthia Ann Parker's son, Quanah Parker, is also buried there. Conclusion. Thus, Indians treated white women taken captive differently. Some were more than happy to be taken into families and taught their traditions. Others were raped and killed on the spot. But still in general, the attitude to European girls and women was favourable. Because Indians believed that before them, not only a valuable object for exchange, but also a keeper of the hearth in the society of Aborigines.